Welcome to Entertainment Elf. Today we bring to you the movie review of 5 Feet Apart. 5 Feet Apart is a 2019 American romantic drama film directed by Justin Baldoni, in his directorial debut, and written by Mickey Daughtry and Tobias Iacones. It was released in the United States on March 15, 2019 by CBS Films. The film received mixed reviews from critics and has grossed over $91 million worldwide. The movie begins with Stella, a popular YouTuber who chronicles her life with cystic fibrosis, readmitted to St. Grace's for decreasing lung function as she struggles to balance life between her newly divorced parents. She asserts that her parents would collapse under their grief if she died. To ensure her survival, Stella relies on a strict regimen complete with an app she has created for chronic illness patients. On her way to visit her childhood friend Poe, also a cystic fibrosis patient, Stella encounters an unfamiliar patient whose disregard of the hospital rules disgusts her. The new patient, Will Newman, spots Stella watching him and, out of boredom and attraction, follows her. Stella and Will instantly clash over Stella's disgust with Will's disobedience and Will's mocking of Stella's rigidity. After being chided by the respiratory therapist Barb, who is a close friend of Stella's, for straying from the 3rd floor, Will returns to his room and reflects on his impatience for his upcoming birthday, when he will finally be free from his mother's control, as she constantly moves him to various international hospitals searching for the newest treatment to cure him. Suffering from B. Cepacia, a bacterial infection of the lungs, Will has lost his place on the lung transplant list and longs for the freedom to die peacefully outside a hospital. An artist, Will imagines the scene in his head. Curious about Stella, he discovers her YouTube page. Barb warns Stella about Will's B. Cepacia and the deadly consequences of infection. Stella notices a bit of redness on her stomach but ignores it and reconnects with her friend Poe. Meanwhile, Will consumes all of Stella's YouTube videos and, after hearing about the poor results from the clinical trial he is enrolled in, argues with his mother over his desire for independence. Frustrated, Will escapes to the roof. From her bedroom, Stella observes Will about to fall from the roof and rushes to save him. She discovers Will safe on the roof and, after becoming aggravated at his flippant threats to jump, leaves the roof and sets off the alarm. Will flees before being discovered while an unnerved Stella struggles to stop thinking about Will's refusal to cooperate with his medical treatments. The next day Stella confronts Will about his rejection of treatment and, eventually, strikes a deal with Will that she will pose for a drawing if Will completes his treatments. Will reluctantly agrees and, upon returning to his room, strikes up a conversation with Poe, who shares how close he and Stella are, which makes Will jealous. Poe clarifies that he is gay, and Will opens up about his B. Cepacia infection, which has spread quickly. The next morning Stella enters Will's room carefully and sets up his organizational system to ensure he will complete his treatments. Stella adamantly denies any romantic attraction to Will. After discovering that Will is not following his treatments as faithfully as she would like, Stella demands that they complete their treatments together. As they begin completing their treatments together over video chat, Stella and Will grow closer. Distraught over his fight with Stella, Will speaks with Poe in the chapel, where Poe confesses his own struggles as the child of a deportee living on his own. Later that night Will visits Stella, who informs him of her surgery. Seeing Stella's anxiety, Will concocts a plan. Before Stella's surgery, Will surprises and comforts her with both Abby's drawing and the sister's favorite song. As Will leaves the operation room, Will overhears Barb yelling at Stella's parents for their inability to set aside their differences for Stella. Spotting Will, Barb disciplines him for risking Stella's life. Barb shares the story of a couple just like Stella and Will who died after infecting one another with B. Cepacia. Stella wakes up from surgery and attempts to thank Will for his support. After Will does not return her calls or show up to a meeting she arranges between the two of them, Stella learns about Barb's lecture to Will from Poe. Stella goes to Will's room to confront him, but he refuses to change his mind for fear that he will kill her. Poe agrees with Barb and Will, leading to a fight between him and Stella. They reconcile the next day. Will receives an envelope from Stella under his door and a link to Stella's latest YouTube video. In the video Stella challenges the medically mandated 6 feet of distance she and Will must maintain at all times. In Stella's version, she changes the mandate to 5 feet of distance in an act of defiance against the rules that keep them separate. They arrange to meet later that evening. On their first date that night, the night before Will's birthday, Stella and Will maintain 5 feet distance and divulge personal truths, ranging from Will's father abandoning him to their views of the afterlife. The date ends hours later, after they receive a notice from Poe that Barb is searching for them. They narrowly escape Barb's notice. On his birthday, Will fights with his mother, whom he accuses of not knowing him. His mother storms off. He instantly regrets his accusations upon seeing his mother's thoughtful gift of an original cartoon print he adores. He realizes he has misconceived his mother's care for him as control. Both Stella and his friend Jason say they cannot see him on his birthday, making Will sad. Later that afternoon, Will discovers a scavenger hunt created by Stella that leads him to a surprise party Stella planned with their friends. The party is eventually broken up by an angry Barb, who escorts them back to their rooms and threatens Will with a transfer to another hospital. Just as Stella is about to fall asleep later that night, she hears alarms from Poe's room and discovers that he has stopped breathing. Poe is pronounced dead shortly after. Will attempts to comfort Stella, but she pushes him away. She later escapes to the roof and observes Will leaving the hospital. Upset over Stella's rejection of him and Barb's threats to transfer him, Will waits in the lobby for his Uber when he encounters Stella through the hospital's glass doors. She beckons him outside and convinces Will to follow her to a park 2 miles away. Will reluctantly agrees, and they take multiple breaks on their trek to the park. As they skate around a frozen pond, Stella reads one of the many messages coming to her phone. She sees that the messages are Barb informing her of a lung transplant in the next 3 hours. Without informing Will, Stella decides to forego the lung transplant in favor of spending any time she can with him. Will soon receives the same messages on his phone from his mother and attempts to convince Stella to agree to the transplant. As they passionately discuss Stella's transplant, Stella falls into the frozen pond and begins to drown. Stella struggles to breathe and, feeling a hand rescuing her, reunites with her sister Abby from the afterlife. Stella observes Will trying to resuscitate her as Abby begs Stella to choose life. Will collapses from exhaustion. Stella wakes up in the hospital, calls out for Will, and informs her parents that she does not want the lung transplant. She expresses her desire to be with Will and knows that she and Will cannot be together if she has the transplant. Will begs Stella to accept the transplant and asks her to think about what she will gain from it. Stella finally agrees after thinking about Abby's final request for her to live. Stella tests negative for B. Kepatia, a fear after Will administered CPR to her. Meanwhile, Will draws out scenes from their memories together in the waiting room and plans a surprise for Stella. This surprise will be his final goodbye. Stella wakes from recovery and is presented with a sketchbook of Will's drawings. He says goodbye to her from the window and asks her to close her eyes as he walks away forever. This is where the movie ends. 5 Feet Apart is more than just a love story between Stella and Will. It has a truly powerful message that everyone should take away from this brilliant film. Live life to the fullest, because you never know what might happen tomorrow. This movie spreads awareness about cystic fibrosis and the people that have it. It really shows how cystic fibrosis patients are normal human beings who do normal things and their disease does not define them as a person. Comment down below which movie review would you like to see next. Subscribe to the channel and share the video with your friends. Thanks for watching.